Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Sit Rep for Wednesday, the 29th of October, 2025. I'm your host, Mike Shelby. We again have a lot to cover today. Robert, good morning. Let's go ahead and jump inside the Beltway here, starting with, there's been a lot of talk from Democrats about accountability, and we've likened it to not exactly like the Nuremberg trials, but I mean, effectively, they're talking about going in and identifying these ICE agents and Border Patrol agents and putting them through some form of trials if they take, if Democrats take back power in 2029. Of course, this will be a part of their project 2029. At any rate, what's the latest here?
So Axios is reporting that a DC insider source told them that congressional Democrats are paying attention to the tactics that some of the state level Democratic officials are using against the Trump administration. Specifically, they said that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's ICE Accountability Commission has caught the attention of congressional Democrats. We've already seen an attempt to create what it was effectively an ICE docs database by House Democrats. I think they are likely pushing for some kind of, or going to push for some kind of accountability commission with the idea that they will prosecute ICE and CBP agents if they retake power in 2028.
Mm-hmm. What laws are these people violating?
Though that's at the state level, what they're trying to say is that some of these ICE and CBP agents would be violating these new anti-police or anti-masking laws that are directed at police. And a lot of the talk has also been about charging ICE and CBP agents with like assault or excessive use of force at the state level. So far, that has not materialized, but I think the idea behind like these different ICE accountability commissions and reporting portals like in New York and Illinois is that people would provide video evidence, alleged video evidence of these assaults or excessive use of force. And then later on, I think likely in coordination with federal level Democrats, there would become some type of civil or criminal federal proceedings against some of these officials.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on here because we do have two items about this mid-decade redistricting. In Colorado, they're still trying to push for it. Maryland, apparently, maybe now against it. What's the latest?
Yeah, this is so in Colorado. Attorney General Phil Weiser is urging Colorado Democrats to put in an emergency ballot initiative next year to allow them to redistrict Colorado ahead of the 2028 election. This is actually against what Governor Jared Polis has been doing. He actually has resisted a mid-decade redistricting effort. In Maryland, they've reversed course, and this is from Maryland State Senate President Bill Ferguson, who sent a confidential letter around to Democrats in Maryland. He said that trying to redistrict in Maryland ahead of the 2026 election is too politically risky. Specifically, they have already had problems trying to redistrict to get more Democrat seats where they've been struck down by the state Supreme Court. But his other primary concern is that them pushing through a map will push some of these Republican-controlled states that have been resisting pressure from the White House to all pass their own new maps. He actually cited in his letter that Republicans have more Democrat seats in states where they have a governing trifecta than Democrats have GOP seats in their own states, which I found surprisingly honest. That's not like very few of the people pushing for this mid-decade redistricting on the Democrat side have acknowledged that Republicans have a much better chance of getting more seats out of this than Democrats do because Democrat states are already heavily gerrymandered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Not adding any more fuel to the fire. All right. And then let's move on to this Jacobin article. Jacobin is a socialist magazine, and they publish about what you would expect to come out of a socialist magazine. It's funny because I've seen, I think it was in the Washington Post and now in Jacobin, a couple other places, there's been this big push. And all these people are saying, well, we need a national protest mobilization movement. We need a mass mobilization movement in this country to combat Trump. And this is exactly what Indivisible has been doing literally since the day after the election. Actually, you go back to 2016, they've been trying to build this thing. But a couple of days after the election, they held their first strategy call on exactly how to do this. At any rate, the author of this article is Eric Blank, and he is a professor at Rutgers University. I think that's the same place where Mark Bray was also, I think it still is also a professor. Mark Bray wrote the Anti-Fascist Handbook. He's kind of the official, unofficial spokesperson of Antifa. At any rate, what did this guy write?
So Eric Blank, he said that after the No Kings protests, it's time to ramp up nonviolent mass mobilization. He said specifically some of these Trump resistance groups should experiment with what he called disruptive, nonviolent, and attention-grabbing tactics that are easy for most people to replicate, and with the idea that these are going to go viral. He said that, well, one, this is required to galvanize a mass nonviolent movement because there is a pervasive sense of fear among most people of actually engaging in any kind of disruptive protest activity. And one of the suggestions he made was creating what he called weekly Freedom Friday demonstrations, basically something that's relatively simple, localized, and can be repeated every week, just to get people out and getting activated, basically. And he also said that they should start pressuring businesses and institutions to either actively or passively participate in general strikes, or what he called civic shutdowns. In this case, like not firing employees for conducting walkouts, or local officials shutting down government services during a called general strike.
Mm-hmm. This is a very, very important article because this is exactly what Indivisible is doing. I read through the article this morning. This is pretty standard escalation for the strategy that they call strategic nonviolence or nonviolent resistance. And this is something that's been espoused for, or has been espoused for decades by this guy named Gene Sharp. Everyone should be familiar with Gene Sharp by now. He's written various publications, but one of them is called From Dictatorship to Democracy. And it's kind of like level zero, foundational, baseline level understanding of the strategy of nonviolence. And also, it's important because that's the building block of these color revolutions, attacking the 6 pillars. And I would just remind everyone that Indivisible published, they had this training video where they talk about those 6 pillars of society. They are business, labor, faith institutions like church, academia, civil service, so federal employees, or I guess government employees in general, and then finally, military and police. Those are the six pillars that they want to undermine and attack. And this is very important because you go back and you study the very first classic color revolution in 2000 in Serbia. And what did they do? They had the same strategy. They attacked the same 6 pillars. And so it does not take long when you can start connecting the dots between previous color revolutions and the one that's ongoing in this country. And you start to look at all these similarities, and they're reading the same stuff and telling people to read the same source documents and study the same nonviolent tactics and pursue the same strategy of strategic non-cooperation. And it's pretty clear. They may not punch the big red button. We'll have to wait and see what 2028 looks like. They may not punch the big red button for color revolution, but all this stuff that they are promoting, this is just like basic, very basic color revolution kind of stuff. So if it's not apparent to you by now, hopefully it should be, or hopefully it will be, because this is exactly what they're doing. Assembling the building blocks of a color revolution, probably for 2028. All right, Robert, thanks for standing by. And with that, we'll go ahead and move over to our global sit rep. Brazil is offering, Jared, good morning. Brazil is offering to mediate talks, maybe avoid regime change in Venezuela, perchance.
Yeah, that's about the extent of it. It's primarily to maintain regional peace. Looks like they're trying to just prevent escalation here. Mm-hmm. Over in the Middle East, a couple of big things happened. The Israelis seem to think that the U.S.-Israel relationship is completely under threat. One of them even saying that the ceasefire will test it to its limits. And the Afghan-Pakistan peace talks failed. The Afghan Interior Ministry did mention nuclear weapons, and the Pakistan defense minister has promised to obliterate the Taliban. Over in Europe, but from Taiwan's foreign ministers and a Latvian member of the European Parliament are proposing an international effort to protect undersea cables around Taiwan. This was actually being effectively a forced escalation of who's protecting them. And even just yesterday, Taiwan intercepted a Chinese boat they suspected of preparing to damage the undersea cables. Then
you really rushed through that, but briefly, that was Latvia and the European Parliament are now talking about protecting Taiwanese undersea cables.
Yes, and
how is Latvia even going to do that? It seems like they would have their hands full in the Baltics with Russia.
Well, I think the point of it is to get the foot in the door with the rest of the European Parliament, and Taiwan did succeed in doing that. Now, I did double check because one of the Baltic states has at least near real recognition, and it was not Latvia, it's Lithuania. So that means that Taiwan's probably gained even more ground than what they appear to already have done.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then over in South Korea's president requested that President Trump amend a U.S.-South Korea agreement to allow them to have nuclear fuel for submarines. This would allow South Korea to make nuclear-powered subs, a change from their normal diesel subs. And the South Korean president even said that specifically there will be no nuclear weapons on it. We will build it ourselves, and this will relieve the operational burden of U.S. forces. So he's pushing real hard for this. This is similar to the AUKUS agreement, though missing quite a few other pillars.
Mm-hmm. And the AUKUS agreement being Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
Yes, the one
this joint production of nuclear submarines, correct?
Yes, down in Australia for Australia.
Mm-hmm. And remember, the big push to build this stuff in obviously Australia for Australia, but the big push to build U.S. ships in South Korea is they're already over in that theater of war, and they don't have to make that trip. And South Korea can produce more faster than the United States can, correct?
Yeah, they certainly can. I think the nuclear subs, if they are able to get this amended, that would significantly change the balance of power, particularly around the peninsula. Just they could keep everybody out quite a bit more effectively.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then just for us non-Navy guys, when you say nuclear submarines, is this nuclear powered submarines or
yes.
these nuclear weapon capable submarines?
Nope. Or nuclear powered submarines? That is, and the South Korean president was very explicit. That is all they are aiming for, is nuclear powered submarines, not nuclear weapons.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Thanks for that, Jared. And we'll move on. 90 protests today. That's above baseline. And by the way, guys, check this map. And if you're an early warning subscriber, go check the map. And if you have a protest or some event in your area, maybe head on down there and check it out and just see which groups are down there. And a lot of these are just establishment Democrat groups, but occasionally you'll go down there and you'll find Refuse Fascism, or there's like a PSL, or there's a handful of other groups or political parties out there who are way far to the left of Democrats. And if you have a problem with Democrats, you will definitely have a problem with these guys. So go and see who's active in your area, who is trying to build these chapters in your area, who's trying to recruit and build, essentially just revolutionary left-wing movements in your locale. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move over to our early warning agenda here. We've got the Homeland Operations brief. Robert's going to brief us on the latest in the federal law enforcement surges and a handful of other topics. And with that, if you'd like to join us for the rest of the early warning briefing, that is members only, head over to forwardobserver.com/trial. Sign up for a free trial, get access to the full report that we post on our website and send out via email every morning, and then the rest of this briefing as well. We thank you so much for joining us on the Daily Sit Rep. And Jared, if you would please take us out. And early warning, folks, please stand by.